In this video, we are going to solve a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Now, we should actually think of the quadratic formula as a theorem. If we have a quadratic equation in this form, the standard form, or as the book calls it, the general form, where a is not equal 0. Of course, if a is 0, we don't have a quadratic equation, so that's going to be sort of understood. Then we know that the solution is this formula. So let's do one example. I have the equation x squared plus 6x equals minus 8. So I want to solve that using the quadratic equation. Well, the first thing I should do is write down the formula. Now, let me give you a word of advice. One way to learn a formula is to write it down many times. So when you're doing your homework from WebAssign, I would suggest on the scrap paper that you're working on, every time you use this formula, write it down. And after you write it down, or maybe half a dozen times, you'll be surprised. It'll be committed to memory. Let me demonstrate. I'm going to write the formula down blindfolded. Well, I'll blindfold myself. All right? Now, let me get the pen right here. All right, let's see if I can do this. X equals minus b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac. All that over 2a. You'll notice no paper, no eyes. I did it blindfolded. Hey, and it actually not too bad. It's a little big and ugly, but that's the formula. You should be able to do the same thing. All right, so let's solve this problem. First, let's clean up this mess. Always was a slob, but this is, oops, this is even sloppier than my usual sloppiness. Okay, let's get rid of that. Bear with me while I do a little housekeeping, and I suppose I can get rid of that too. Okay. So I have my formula x squared plus 6x minus 8. And of course, the first thing I'm going to do is write down the formula. See if I can write a little more neatly this time. X equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So now the question is, what are a, b, and c? Because this is essentially plug and chug exercise. Plug and chug. All right. So we need to know what a, b, and c is. Well, unfortunately, let's check out our theorem. Theorem says it's got to look like this. This does not look like this. So we have to make this look like this. How many lines can I draw here? All right. So I've got x squared plus 6x equals minus 8. I want the right-hand side to be 0, so I'm going to add 8 to the right-hand side. This forces me to add 8 to the left-hand side to keep the equation in balance. So now we have x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals 0. Now that's the correct form, right? Here it is. I have x squared plus x plus something equals 0. I have x squared plus x plus something equals 0. Excellent. So this tells me a, well, that's implicit 1. A equals 1. B is this guy. B equals 6. And C, that's this guy, equals 8. So now I plug it into my formula. This is going to equal minus b. So it's going to be minus 6, all right, plus or minus b squared. Well, that's going to be 6 squared minus 4a. Well, what's a? A is 1 times c, right? Here's my c. What's c? C is 8, so I put in an 8. And what am I left with? 2a. And a, I already knew, it's 1. All right, that's all the heavy lifting. The heavy lifting is just remembering the formula and remembering what numbers to plug into the formula. Now we can hand this over to our 5th grade brother or sister, and if they know how to use a calculator and the square root button, they can do this problem, or at least the rest of this problem. But let's do the arithmetic. So it's minus 6 plus or minus square root of what's 6 squared? That's 36. Minus 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 8 is 32. So that's 36 minus 32. Oops, don't forget the minus sign. You can easily mess this formula up if you're not careful. And it's 2 times 1, which is just 2. All right. So that's minus 6 plus or minus. 36 minus 32 is 4 over 2. This, now I can split this up, is minus 6 over 2 plus or minus square root of 4. Square root of 4 is 2 over 2. So minus 6 over 2, well, that's easy. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 6 3 times. So that's minus 3. Plus or minus. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 2 once, plus or minus 1. So we have x equals minus 3 plus 1, or minus 3 minus 1. So this is going to be minus 2, and this is going to be minus 4. And as always, in mathematics, you get to check your answer yourself. So let's do that. Let's write down the equation. X squared plus 6x equals minus 8. Boy, my handwriting today is worse than usual. Hope you'll forgive me. All right, so now let's check. We're going to check for x equals minus 2. And what do we get? We get minus 2 squared plus 6 times minus 2. Does that equal minus 8? Minus 2 squared is the same as minus 2 times minus 2, which is 4, and it's going to be plus. Plus and a minus, that's going to be minus. 6 times minus 2 is 12. Does that equal minus 8? And of course, 4 minus 12 is in fact minus 8. So I have minus 8 equals minus 8. This equation is true when x equals minus 2, so that x equals minus 2 is a solution. All right, let's check for x equals minus 4. And what do we get? We get minus 4 squared plus 6 times minus 4. Does that equal minus 8? Again, 4 squared. Minus 4 times 4 is plus 16. Alrighty. Plus. Oops. Plus times a minus is not a plus. It's a minus. Plus times a minus is minus. 6 times minus 4 is minus 24. Is that equal to minus 8? Well, yes it is, of course. Minus 24 plus 16 is, in fact, minus 8. So I get minus 8 equals minus 8. Isn't that wonderful? I now have checked that this solution, x equals minus 4, makes the equation true. Therefore, it is another solution. So I have two solutions. X equals minus 2 minus 4. Next time, we will solve a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula in which we only get one solution. Interesting problem. See you then. Bye now.